Welcome back to the Game Collection. I have a little bit of a confession. I'm not really a huge fan of Final Fantasy VII. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate the game or anything, it just was never that special game to me that it is for so many other people out there. Heresy, I know. But it does put me into a bit of a unique position when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. So I want to find out, is Final Fantasy VII Remake any good for people who aren't huge fans of the original? Let's find out. I am SuperDerek, and this is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Since before the game was released, people on every side of the game have been going to war over everything from the portrayal of Cloud's relative edginess to the portrayal of Tifa's boobs. To say that there are people who never plan to give the game a fair chance is an understatement, especially when you pair those vacuous points of discourse with some considerations of actual consequence, such as changing the battle system to a less accessible action RPG format and maybe tinkering with events that may or may not ultimately undermine some of the major themes of the game. So from the get-go, fans have been preparing to hate this game. Meanwhile, others have been preparing to love the game. But why is this? Well, it's because Final Fantasy VII was for many people a genre-defining game. The big one that introduced them to larger-than-life characters and worlds, mature themes, and focused storytelling. For many people, it was the first game where death had consequences and where sometimes the good guys lose. And for that, Final Fantasy VII will forever hold an enshrined spot in the hearts of hundreds of thousands of players. Was there ever going to be a way for Final Fantasy VII Remake to come in and convince these fanatics that it's just as good or maybe even better than that life-altering experience? Of course not. Sure, it stacks up well against the original release of Final Fantasy VII, it's objectively better in a number of aspects, but that's not exactly the bar that fans have set. The remake is having to compete against the idea of the original in people's hearts, that childhood memory. And there's just no way to compete with that. That said, there's a whole heck of a lot of us out there who don't have a pony in this race like me. My first big epic PlayStation RPG was Legend of Dragoon, which looked and played way better than Final Fantasy VII in my opinion, and I also replayed Chrono Cross dozens of times before I ever got my hands on a copy of Final Fantasy VII. So by the time I got to Final Fantasy VII, I was unimpressed. So I'm not exactly a mega fan of the original 7. As to whether that makes me more or less qualified to review this game, I'll leave for you to decide. Final Fantasy VII Remake is an action RPG on the PlayStation 4. I played on a regular PS4 because I can't afford to pony up for a better PS4, but the plus side to that is that what you see in my review will basically be the baseline for this game's performance. Your experience on other platforms will likely look just as good or probably better. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, the story follows Cloud, an ex-soldier of the Shinra group, and that's soldier with a capital S, a group of elite enhanced warriors who were exposed to Mako, which turns their eyes green and apparently makes their swords longer. Our ex-soldier, now turned mercenary, has teamed up with a childhood friend to assist with their environmental mission of saving the planet by blowing up Mako energy reactors, or power plants that convert the planet's latent Mako energy into electricity. This ragtag team of eco-terrorists is known as Avalanche, and they believe that these Mako reactors are in fact slowly killing the whole planet. Those Mako reactors are what powers the city of Midgar, a dystopian oligarchy run by the aforementioned Shinra group. It is against this diesel punk background that the story picks up with our protagonist and supporting cast infiltrating one of these Mako reactors in an attempt to put the thing out of commission. Things don't exactly go quite as planned though, and the rest of the game sees a game of cat and mouse play out between Shinra and Avalanche. The story told in Final Fantasy VII Remake is a pretty meandering one that tends to see itself go off on wild tangents from time to time, slowing down and exploring new facets of the familiar world not previously explored and elaborating on some of the minutiae hinted at in the original release. This winding and meandering story can sometimes feel unfocused, and several of the new in-depth looks at everyday life under the giant plate in the sky can make the story feel rather slow-moving at times. But for the most part, the depiction of the world through smaller side quests is a welcome addition that helped provide me with at least a better understanding of Midgar and its denizens. All in all, I thought that the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake was great, until it wasn't. And while I won't go into the specifics about what happened for obvious reasons, I feel it's especially frustrating to see Square Enix fumble the ball at the proverbial 99-yard line. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a perfect example of why I play games to the end before writing my reviews. In the immortal words of Arcada of Glass Reflection Reviews, the ending is paramount. Had the game simply ended an hour or 2 hours sooner, the game would have actually been better for it overall. The way the story plays out sometimes can get pretty slow. Sometimes dungeons drag on far longer than necessary, unnecessarily long without much to them. Kind of like when as a kid you might try to make your essay look longer by using a little double space action. Point is, at times you can tell they were milking certain sections a little long, killing the overall pacing. The train graveyard is the place that sticks out the most in my mind as an example of a dungeon that long overstayed its welcome, despite being a very cool part of the game. The characters of Final Fantasy VII Remake were loads of fun to get to know all over again. Seeing them fully realized and fully voice acted really added a lot of additional character depth that enhanced my understanding of the group dynamic. Before, I never cared about Jesse, Wedge, or Biggs, and the way that they were handled in the remake had me not only caring about them this time, but actually cheering them on at certain points. They were easily the most improved characters of the game, but the other characters also connected with me on a much deeper level this time around. Tifa, for example, seemed way more conflicted about her role in Avalanche, and perhaps even her role as Cloud's friend at times. Barret was a lovable goofball with nerves of steel and a short fuse, but you could see in his face and hear in his voice the love that he has for his daughter Marlene. No doubt the overhaul of each of these characters was successful in no small part due to the excellent cast of voiceover artists. Despite several of them being relatively new to the voice acting scene, the performances delivered were stellar on all points. Perhaps one of the more controversial aspects of Final Fantasy VII Remake since the details came to light is the fact that Final Fantasy VII Remake departs from the original's turn-based battle system. I was pretty skeptical when I first heard about the battle system change. However, after playing the game, I can say that the battle system is very fun. It plays a lot like a mix of Trials of Mana and Kingdom Hearts 3, but without that extra summoning stuff that ruined the pacing of combat in Kingdom Hearts 3. During combat, the player takes control of any party member in the party and mashes attack buttons and builds up combos to build up the ATB meter. Once that's filled, characters can perform techniques or cast spells using equipped materia and that sort of thing. Things felt extremely hectic for me at first. Playing on normal difficulty though, I did gradually find a rhythm to battle that felt good. It took far longer to acclimate to Final Fantasy VII Remake as opposed to Trials of Mana Remake, but also the system is a bit more complex, so I suppose that's to be expected. Each character during combat also controls in a wholly unique way. Aerith, for example, has a floaty dodge and casts simple magic attacks from a distance, whereas Tifa is a super fast brawler. Cloud is pretty good at all-round melee fighting, and Barret is also a pretty solid fighter at ranged. However, it should be noted that Barret can equip melee weapons and becomes an unstoppable wrecking ball of a beast. Each character has their own rhythm to battle that reflects their personalities and makes each character feel like they've really got a spot in the party that they fill in. You know, simply swapping out materia will not fill that Barret-shaped hole in your party, and that's actually pretty awesome. I feel like action RPGs of this variety are, however, an inherently less accessible format to people who have slower reflexes or impaired dexterity. So for the fact that fans of the original might be locked out of some of the most fun in Final Fantasy VII Remake is an extreme bummer. There is an included classic mode, and from what I've played of it, it felt so unbelievably easy that it's almost insulting. This is mainly because switching to classic mode automatically pushes the difficulty setting to easy. The upshot is that the game is more accessible in this mode, but the downside is that players with no other options may be hard-pressed to find enjoyment in the battle system, and that really sucks. There are plenty of small mini-games to discover throughout the game, such as playing darts, doing squats, attacking boxes, and doing pull-ups. Well, I never said they were all fun, and there are plenty of side quests that you can do to help enrich the lives of the people living in Midgar, optional fights you can participate in to unlock special summons, and arena battles to unlock special moves. The world of Final Fantasy VII Remake is, on the whole, incredibly detailed. The game takes place mainly in the Midgar slums, the area of Midgar underneath the giant plate in the sky. Despite depicting an incredibly depressing analogy for modern-day life, the designers have found a way to make the world bright, if a little bit dead. This is a dictionary definition of a dystopia, after all. Midgar feels absolutely massive to traverse. The slums of various sectors each feel like you're visiting a variety of smaller shanty towns, each with their own unique layout and mood. Going from one sector to the next takes a good long while, for better or worse, enhancing that feeling of the scale of the overarching metropolis. There are portions of the game where you travel from the city underbelly to the high-tech city of Midgar proper, exploring the inner mechanisms of the plates and the infrastructure that holds the city up, and it just goes on forever and emphasizes the scale here. I especially loved the glimpses at the seldom-seen residential districts above the plates and exploring the Shinra office building. It's an aspect I'd have loved to walk around a bit more in, but I understand why it wasn't something the game designers chose to do. The game presents Midgar from the perspective of the oppressed populace, after all, and the world design reflects that. And even if you can't explore the whole of Midgar, the game presentation will absolutely drive home that feeling of Midgar being an absolutely massive city. Musically, Final Fantasy VII Remake is a total home run. The fully orchestral versions of the songs you loved from the original make a return in a huge way. As a non-musical guy, it's hard for me to really express just how and why each of the covers sounds like a faithful remaster, but bigger and better in all the right ways. I'm not really one of those people who thinks orchestral covers are just inherently better, which I talked about in my review of Dragon Quest XI. These aren't just orchestral for the sake of being orchestral covers, though. A lot of effort has been put into making each song feel more grand and epic and alive than ever before. Visually, Final Fantasy VII Remake is one of the best, if not the best looking game on the PlayStation 4. Aesthetically, the designers managed to translate Nomura's character designs into a balanced mix of hyper-realism and anime inspiration. The industrial look of the entire world is full of grit and grime, a perfect expression of the original world concept, and the fact that this was translated to this degree of faithfulness is absolutely staggering. Getting a good look at Tifa's bar at the beginning of the game really sets the standard that they followed throughout the whole rest of the game. There are a few examples of low-resolution textures that can be spotted throughout the game that are unfortunately pretty visible from time to time. I suspected for a time that perhaps these placeholder textures were just never loaded due to a glitch or something, but by now the game's been out long enough that they should have been patched by now. If you've been looking, and even if you haven't been looking, you've most likely seen some screenshots of the worst offenders within the game. Fortunately, if it isn't already obvious from the rest of the gameplay I've been showing off here, the overall experience is orders of magnitude better than what you might have been led to believe. For the time being, Final Fantasy VII Remake is a timed exclusive on the PlayStation 4. I suspect we'll eventually see ports to the upcoming PlayStation and Xbox consoles and even PC, maybe. Hopefully when that time comes though, these graphical blemishes will be resolved. Throughout my playthrough of Final Fantasy VII Remake, I heard no end to the strong opinions about this game. Everything from it being the single greatest video game of all time, to being an abomination, that only serves as a testament to the greed of Square Enix and how far they've fallen. There's so much vitriol surrounding this game that I actually considered dropping my review of it altogether on a number of occasions, because there's just so many people out there with such strong, self-righteous opinions that there's no way I could satisfy everybody. But here we are at the end of my playthrough and at the end of my review. And I have to say that pretty much every opinion that I've heard up to this point has been wrong. Because Final Fantasy VII is a game with nuance, a history, and a legacy. Final Fantasy VII Remake is an impressive game by any multitude of standards. The things that Square Enix accomplished during the production are jaw-dropping, and that's truly no wonder to me that the game had to be split into multiple releases so each game could fund the development of the next. This was a massive undertaking. Final Fantasy VII Remake is also a massive departure from where it started on the PlayStation. Some would venture to say that it's no longer even a remake nor a remaster. Some have called it a reimagining. I think personally I would call it a retelling. A retelling of the same overarching story, but by a different storyteller. One who meanders around, remembers some details a little better than others, maybe one who heard the story a bit differently, and maybe it'll even have a different ending. And while that might not exactly be a bad thing, it's definitely not what a lot of people were expecting and anticipating since the game's announcement. To me, Final Fantasy VII Remake was good. Just good. Almost great, but again, it kind of stumbled during one of its most crucial moments. It's not the savior of gaming, but it's also not the RPG Antichrist either. It's just a really impressive, good action RPG. It's not a replacement for the original, and honestly, I don't think anybody expected that it could be either. But I will say that having played it, I do now have a deeper understanding and appreciation for the original, and I think that's probably one of the highest compliments I could give to a retelling such as this. And it's also why Final Fantasy VII Remake has earned itself a spot in the Game Collection. The Game Collection is a viewer-supported show. If you enjoyed this review, please consider subscribing. For live streams of my playthroughs, follow me on Twitch. And thank you for watching.